Hi Anthony, and thank you for joining me today. The first question I'd like to ask you is, how did the idea of your book come to life?
I've been writing for a long time, probably first when I was in New Guinea, assistant hotel manager up there, and I ended up with an exercise book full of writings because I had plenty of time to think, because it was the first time I was actually away from family and everybody I knew, and it gave me a lot of time for contemplation. And then after I filled that exercise book, I had one of those, as we all do as we're growing up, had a very dark moment, so I just threw it in the bin. One of those moments you can't take back. Years later, a few years later, I started writing again. When I was in nature, just relaxing and just contemplating of what life is about, and the flow of water and the flow of river and the cycle of life and where it comes into it. And I started using nature as my creativity, I suppose you could say, in reflection in where I'm at. And from there I started writing them and just collect them. They could be on the back of cigarette packets or sandwich wrappers or a bit of anything, cardboard, anything that's lying around. When the moment stirs me, I just write them straight out. Usually I don't go back. I might change or add an occasional word because it doesn't flow, and that's the only reason I change it. But generally all my poetry and stuff that I've written is straight out. I don't think twice about it. And from then on, various people have asked me certain things, and I sort of shared my poetry with them. They said, when are you going to get it published? Well, that's been going on since the 1970s, and more so in the 90s and the late 90s and 2000s, when I was a scout leader for 15 years. They had a scout newsletter, and they had one called Philosopher's Corner or Poet's Corner, I can't remember which one it was. Anyway, I'd put one in every month, and once again all the parents kept asking me, when are you going to publish your work? Because they would actually get the newsletter to try and find out what I'd written, which was quite funny. And then when COVID came and I lost everything, so to speak, I'd already had the idea of sort of slowly typing all those bits of paper before I went away anywhere. So instead of having these scraps, I could have it all together. So I started typing them up. And an incredible lady who's a Speedy Gonzales in typing, she ended up helping me typing them all out. So she did that. She did that for me. And then when I got to doing workaways in Europe, I worked in this permaculture farm, and there was a very placid songwriter there named Philippe. He's German, and he's always placid, and he saw me typing up another poem I'd written, and he said, do you mind if I read it? And I said, yeah, fine. So he goes, have you got any more? And I said, which one do you want? So he read through a couple, and he said, what's going to happen to these when you die? And I said, well, that's up to my children. Well, I just sat back because it was like I'd unleashed this dragon that came at me and sort of goes, wow, how dare you be a ... selfish so-and-so? And he said, you realise that these poems, or even one of these poems, could change someone's life. Why are you being so selfish? Why are you being so inconsiderate? And I was sort of going, oh shit. Okay. And that's been since the real driving force of making me do it. And then on top of that, I've had some LMA members sort of trying to encourage me to do it. And one in particular from America, Lotus, she's also been, she said, come on, get it going, which has been fantastic. And that's sort of where it all started from.
Did your childhood, schooling and upbringing affect how you wrote your poems, Anthony?
It not only affected how I wrote my poems, it affected my life, and they're sort of intertwined. And I didn't realise this until much later. The analogy between it when I started talking to my editor. There's just another complete story that goes on, but how I met him, but he could see how my poetry changed, and that's why he's put it into 12 chapters of my life. And yes, my upbringing of being a loner at school, being victimised, occasionally my head was used as a punching bag, or teachers making fun of me in front of the class. I just used to spend most of my time with either one or two other friends, and that's it. When they weren't there, I was just by myself at school all the time. And because we lived so far out from the school, and once again there weren't many kids in the neighbourhood, and I didn't really feel that I belonged or fitted in with any of them anyway. There weren't many, so I just spent most of my time by myself, and I had to learn to mind my own satisfaction in what I was doing. I had no intentions of doing any writing because I was decimated really by teachers at school, because I was looking after my brother, who was a rabble-rouser and a bit of a shit stirrer, and so they pounced on me. And I was an introvert anyway, so when you pounce on an introvert, it pushes you further back in your shell. And being at home, I learned to become accustomed and used to being by myself. And then the way that my mother would say, oh, why don't you invite friends? And okay, so when I went to invite a friend, then eventually she'd come up with some excuse not to have them up. So in the end, I just gave up. So once again, I started being a loner. So to me, family pets meant a lot to me, and later a very special dog I had was really good.
Touching on the pets that you just mentioned, and the one in particular that you've just mentioned,
yeah.
How do they help you creatively in your creative process?
Well, my very special dog was during the 70s and 80s, and she was a German Shepherd that I got from a lost dogs home, and we formed a bond through how I think I obtained her, because originally I had a Samoyed cross Labrador that was born in Falls Creek in the ski resorts, and I went down to my parents' place one day and I took her down there and gave her a bath, and she was drying off, so I left the collar off. Well, she jumped 2 6-foot fences, never to be seen again. So I used to drive down every weekend to all the lost dogs home for a few months. So every weekend I'd come down for one day. I'd drive down the night before, after work. I'd drive down, following morning get up, go around all the dog pounds, and then go home again. And slowly, bit by bit, I came to this one place called the Blue Cross where Sherry was, and I just stop a little bit longer each time. And the guy who was showing me through all the time, he twigged on there was something, and he said, I've taken this shepherd down 3 times to be put down, but I couldn't do it because there's just something about her. So she'd already had 3 reprieves from being put down because she was put in there by a guy who got a job in a sheep station and couldn't take a German shepherd with him. And so bit by bit, and then he said, do you want to meet her? And because slowly, bit by bit, she'd come towards the edge of the pen she was in, and eventually I just sort of stroke her fur through the wire, and then I went in, and she just calmly came up to me and just sort of smooched up against me. And then I left again, and then I went away, and I was talking to my mother about it. She said, look, after 3 months, I don't think you're going to get your dog back. And I think you've got a bit of a bond with the shepherd because you keep talking about it. Why don't you go and get it? So I did. And from that moment on, Sherry was mine. She was my shadow. And we had an ESP between us. I would just think things and she would almost know what I'm thinking. For example, when I fed her, it didn't matter what time I fed her. As soon as I thought about feeding her, she'd walk up and go to a bowl. It could be middle of the day, it could be afternoon, middle of the night. It didn't matter. If I thought of giving her any food, she'd go straight to a bowl. But there were other things she would also pick up on. Like if I was feeling a little bit down, she'd always come up beside me and just lay her head on my thigh and just look up at me. Nothing more. She'd just look up. She would know. And she'd always sleep. She would never sleep on my bed. She'd always sleep right next to me beside my bed. And before she went to sleep, she'd always be sleeping, but she'd have her head with her eyes looking up at me before she went to sleep. And then to get away, I used to throw my pack in the back of my four-wheel drive. As soon as I grabbed that, she knew, and she was waiting at the door to go. And I just grabbed her food and we'd disappear into the bush or the surf or mountains or wherever. And it was just an incredible unconditional love and bond.
How has the writing process of your poems, Anthony, affected your view on creative writing and storytelling in general?
With the reactions that I've got from various people within my poems, it sort of made me believe that, okay, I had a certain way with words, because that was said to me frequently and it still does. I think even you've mentioned that to me, that you have a way with words. But it made me realise that all those English teachers were wrong, in that, not so much wrong, but misinformed would be a better way, or their concept of prejudging someone needed to be re-educated. And in a way, it's a way of shining up the education department, that not always someone who's quiet, reserved, never judge them by a standard of everybody else. Every single person is an individual, and unfortunately in the system, and that's what it is a system, they don't take always into account the individual qualities of an individual student. And the encouragement I've got from just general people towards my writings made me start to believe in myself that I do have that knack and I do have a way with words, and I find it easy, whether I write a song or whether I write poems, or now I'm writing a book. New Guinea Hotel, and the thing is that in the book I gave that to my editor, not to be edited, just to read it and just say, am I wasting my time or do I keep writing? And he said it made him want to turn the page from when he started reading it, and he said, don't stop writing. That was enough for me, because we had spent days on my poems and editing, just getting the right few things together. We went word by word, line by line, checking the punctuation, etc., just going through it all and the meanings behind it. So, because he already had in mind how he would have that concept of how it's been through my life, and that's where he was coming from. This is why we went into certain details, because it was not just a poem I was telling him. He was actually in that time learning about me, and that is what he has put into writing or sort of creating this book. But my novel, there's a lot I'm putting into that, and I just find I've got this, even when I'm writing a poem, it's like I've got this either picture or feeling within me, or a combination of both. And in my novel, I'm reliving the moments that I was in that hotel in New Guinea, and it's like I've got this movie going, completely, full colour. I can see the people, the faces, the hair, the moods, and the tension in some cases. I could feel it all. And when I'm writing it, it's just a matter of how do I just can't get it down quick enough. And it's just sort of like this movie which is flowing. And therefore I'm just writing this movie that's in my brain. And that's the creative process I now use when I'm writing. It's a combination of visualization, emotions, and experiences that I'm putting onto paper. In the book of poetry, it's more emotional because it's where I was in certain stages of my life, and in many ways I express myself better in the written word than I do verbally.
Now that you are a published author, what has been your most rewarding part of that process?
I think you know the answer to that one. Freedom. The realization that sort of like all that I've been through in my life, it's sort of, even my novel, at the time I actually started writing it when I was 19, I had the full plan and everything, the layout of how I was going to write this book. But then life got in the way and I didn't write it. And that plan came out, fell beside my bag just before I left for Europe during COVID. And I didn't write it because I then now realise why I hadn't, is because I hadn't lived life. I needed to live life to write that book, New Guinea Hotel, which is a combination of two different styles of writing, plus a more in-depth autobiography, plus a story of the young guy finding self-love through a theme of fraud by the hotel manager. But within that journey, I'm putting into it all the things that I have learnt and I've gone through within my life. Because the young guy in it is me at 19, who has a mentor that's me at 70, guiding him through, and also how he starts his spiritual journey at the same time, as well as his life's journey. Like, he goes up very green and naive, which I was at that time. In hindsight, I can see that. At the time, I didn't. Like all of us, as we're growing up, we don't see it. As you've said in previous conversations, you can connect the dots behind you, but you can't see the ones in front of you. So that's basically why I had to live life to be able to write it. And to me, I'm writing about life in my story. So amongst all of that, the reward, when I say freedom, and to be able to put all that behind me, it's now the freedom of that, okay, I finally realised that I can be me. I'm not worried about what other people think. I'm not concerned about expectations of other people, be it they acquaintances, friends, family, children, or anything. I have to look after myself first. I deeply love my children, but that's another story. And the challenges that all of that has in their lives. And hopefully they will understand in the future, but maybe that will come out in my novel. They've got some inkling with all my poetry, of various things, if they can reflect on and put themselves where I was when I wrote them. Because each poem that I have written has directly related, as I said before, to nature. And if you just take the time, nature has the answers. You just need to spend time. Leave your phones behind. Leave all electronic. We're just so bombarded, as one of my poems says. We are so bombarded with electronic BS, for want of a better term. And we're just being programmed to depend on it. And it's like society is now becoming so dependent. Like, I was catching a train the other day, and just for curiosity and peak hour train, I added up how many people were not on their phones. Now, out of a packed train, standing room only on this train coming from London out to Kent, 7 people in one carriage did not have their phones, and only 2 of them were reading books. Now if that's just a pure sample, that steel coffin that we're travelling in is just that, the coffin in time. And that's what they're doing. So to me, getting the freedom of being able to not only release all of that, is to try and share that experience in my poetry, to get people to think about their lives, to be able to think about where they are, to the little things, the most important things in life. Money will come and go. We come to this world with nothing, and we leave with nothing. And in many ways, everything else is just stuff. And after losing a lot of stuff, all my possessions, so to speak, except for a shipping container full of bits, it's the little things in life, to me, that now make the difference. So I live out wherever. Now I have no home, I have nothing, but I have a bag and I have my guitar, and wherever they land, that's my home. My home is where I make it and how I feel within. and how those people respond to me and how I respond to them. I can give out, or I can not give out. If you want to be vulnerable, you've got to give to receive. And that's one of the things hopefully I've portrayed, and I intend to portray even further through all the things I intend to write, is the values that you have to date have been programmed. Now, it's only a program. It's not how you were put into this world. You were put into this world like a sponge. But you were given certain talents. Every single person is given talents. Some people have incredible abilities in academia. Other people have a very practical skill. Other people have very theatrical, musical, talented skills. Like if you go back in history, and all the creation of music by Tchaikovsky and Beethoven and all those sort of people, like Beethoven overcame his adversity of losing his hearing, but he could still write music. He felt it through the vibration. He readjusted his talent to adapt to the surroundings and abilities he had at that time. Like each one of us, as we live through life, we adapt to the abilities and the talents that we have. And if we look at those talents and build on those talents, we're given them. Life is more interesting and far more rewarding. And now I've learnt that, okay, I didn't realise I had this gift. And now I'm realising that I do, and I'm now pursuing it. I had a gift in carpentry and building, and I did that for a long time. But I also now realise that I have a gift in putting words. And I only say that because it's not me saying it, it's the feedback I receive. And I say that humbly because I'm just like anybody else in this world. The only difference is I've recognised what I have, which is not of this world. It is a gift from within. And if we all get into that gift from within, we'll find life a lot more rewarding and a lot happier. In the overall process of this, I've also realised that through life that it takes far more backbone to believe in yourself and follow your gut feelings, which I personally believe my angels guiding me, because when you don't listen to your gut feelings, the proverbial hits the fan every time. But having that backbone takes a hell of a lot more strength, rather than listening to peers, what society's throwing down your throat, what's being rammed into you with technology. You have the power. Every person has the power to fulfill what they want if they truly believe. That little mustard seed of belief, quoting a famous term out of the Bible, but that mustard seed of belief, you just take that, and if you truly believe it, yes, you can move that mountain, and yes, you can make things happen. Because if you reflect on a lot of people that are now well known, be it singers, movie stars, various other people like Mandela, they have that mustard seed of faith within them, and they made it happen. They didn't listen to everybody else. And that takes far more than it does just going with the crowd. Yes, you can feel ostracized. Yes, you can feel alone, but you're not alone. You can think about what I mean by that. You are not alone. No one is ever alone. That energy, that force is within you, and you have that power within you. And that spiritual power is always in you because it's been given to you since birth. But it takes recognition to listening. And in listening into nature, as I've done, that is where your immense power comes from, is that connection. And that connection will take you through everything, will take you through life, all your ups and downs. If I put all the stuff that I've been through into one thought pattern, I'd be so disillusioned, so down, so out. I could easily be dead by now, just going down a very dark path. But I've chosen not to. And that's why I regard myself as an irrepressible cork. And I just keep bobbing back up again. People might push me under the water for a little while. Yes, I might sort of curse and whatever, but I always come back up. That everybody has the opportunity to do. And this is what I'm now doing, is believing in myself. It's not being egotistical. It's just believing in my own abilities that I've given. But the difference is, how can those abilities help other people? As Philip said, how dare I hide that when someone else could benefit from it? If I help one person, and on all the writings that I do, then it's been worth it.
What is the essential theme and message of your book, Anthony?
I think I virtually just summed that up in the previous statement. Invest in yourself, not on an egotistical basis, but invest in who you are, and to make it happen, and to have that backbone, to have that mustard seed, and to find it, go into nature, appreciate the little things. I'll take one example. You look at just a leaf of any plant. Look at the intricate detail in that plant. You turn it over on the back and you see all the little ribs coming out, and then from that you've got all the tiny, it's almost like little cells that you're looking at, and every single cell is different, every little piece is different, and the colours all change, even within that minute little detail of any leaf. The back of it is a different texture, it is slightly dull, the front side might be highly glossy. You've got different colours, you've got different, and every leaf is different to the next. That's like humanity. Every single person is different. They're made up differently. Well, there's your comparison. Nature's saying everything is different, even just in a leaf. So why is humanity different? We're not. We're all created. We all have an incredible, complex nature within us. How we look at things, a lot of that is conditioned and is pre-programmed. And a lot of it is at a very early age of where we're not aware. And from generation to generation, that is passed down to us. And until we break that hereditary programming, if it's negative, do we get out of it? And it's only the strong who take the time, who want to listen, who want to change. And that's the key. Want to. And to listen. Not just listening to media, to other people, but listen to nature. Listen to the spirit within them. It's a matter of asking yourself the right questions and not being just part of a mass production line of people coming out of the system, because that's where a majority of it is. Like, you take the banks, for example, they're not interested in people anymore. We are just a number. What's your ID? What's your number? Where is society going? What's your ID? What's your number? What do you try and live today, and I've got one friend who does. He has just a basic phone. No special, he can only ring out and receive calls. That's all he can do. Super basic phone. And he gets ostracized all the time, and he does not and has totally refused to have anything to do with computers or iPad. And he goes, and they say, "Oh, just, fill out this and that." And he said, "I don't have one." He goes, "Well, just get someone else to do it." "I don't want to. I don't believe in it. I'm a person. I'm not a machine. I'm not a number." You go to a supermarket, they're gradually cutting out cashiers. If I have the choice and I go, doesn't matter if I'm buying one thing, I'll go through by the cashier. Because not only am I dealing with a person, I'm also helping them with a job. I'm providing them with a job. I'm giving back. What goes around comes around. And that same sentence of what goes around comes around is the same thing as what's going to come back to originally where this society is heading at the moment. It'll reach a point where it will explode and come back on itself. Why are a lot of people opting out of cities and going to smaller places? Why are more little communes starting up at various places around the world? To build that sense of togetherness, of people interaction. Why is it happening? Because they've started asking themselves the question, what the hell am I doing here? There's a guy I met in France. He was in a very high status in a very, very successful advertising company, which will remain unnamed. He gave all of that away to be the father for his daughter in France. And he's now in partnership with a French guy in a small little cafe, and he loves his life. So really getting back to the overall core of what I've written to date is take time out for yourself without any ego, because ego is, as what's his name, Deepak Chopra said, is edging God out. So take out that and take time for yourself from your day to evaluate your life and do it daily. Not just every now and again. I've done that every now and again, and that's been the journey of my life. But now I sort of do it every day. What's important, like when you wake up in the morning and you get those new brain cells, new DNA that's open to suggestion, open to change, open to be put in a positive frame cocoon rather than a negative cocoon to feed either a positive situation later or a negative situation, because that's what it is. It's food to those. So the more negative food you have, the more negative you become. The more positive food you have, the more positive you become. So over a period of time, if you keep doing it every morning, you're going to end up with more positivity than you have negativity. And eventually the positive, it takes time. It's taken me a couple of years to change it completely. And it can change your life. You can reverse a situation. But if you start with just being open to nature, it's almost like a cleansing situation. Like if people just Google, if they want to use technology, Google the benefits of walking in nature, and they will be bombarded with the health benefits and the mental benefits and the emotional benefits that are gained from being in nature. That's one reason why I like the American Indian philosophy. And one of their classics is an American Indian asks, what does he think about the way that the European people go to church all the time. And he goes, I don't understand why they have to go to a building to pray. We've got nature. Because nature is where it all is. Because if you take away buildings, if you leave buildings alone for a long period of time, what happens to them? Nature eventually reclaims it. You look at in Thailand, you look at the ruins there, how the trees on the root system is gradually climbing over all the old ruins. And some of the ruins that they're finding in the middle of, immense forests, nature has reclaimed the structures. Nature is the dominant feature. Nature is dominant in everything. Man is not. We try and change it, but we're not the dominant force. Can you see man controlling a tornado? Can you see man controlling the wind of nature? Can you see man controlling a tsunami? Can you see man controlling a volcano? They can try and put barriers or interruptions in its way, but they can't control it. So, taking time for yourself to reevaluate where your life really is. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. Reflect your life. Not just reflecting on yourself, reflecting how your life affects other people. As I've said many a time, you look in a mirror, what do you get back? Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. If you're going to be aggressive, don't expect people to be passive. If you're going to be a violent person, don't expect everyone just to sit down and be belted to pieces. Because eventually you will find someone who will turn around and give it back to you, but 10 times stronger. No matter what you do, it'll always eventually come back. The narcissist will eventually pay their own price. Usually by loneliness. Because they cannot stand that. So the real message is take time listen to the other person. Don't go to bed with arguments. Clear the air. Learn to agree to disagree and move on without ego. And take the lessons that you've learned and contemplate when you might be just sitting on the beach looking at the ocean. Let yourself daydream. By daydreaming, you're getting into an area of your life where there is no thought, conscious thought. You're letting a different side of you flow. And you'll find that most of your dreams, daydreaming, majority of those daydreamings are not negative. They're usually positive. Because that's where the better feelings are. Do you want feelings of love, or do you want feelings of hate? Love is the most powerful force on this earth for humanity. And that's where I think the power really is.
Thank you so much for your time today, Anthony.
Pleasure.